Well, good morning because it's morning here in Iowa and Arizona. How are you today, Dorothy?
I'm fantastic. Thank you,
Great.
Chris.
Well, I want to make sure our audience knows how privileged we are to have you today. Um, as we always do, kind of our custom, the Mark Twain custom of having the best person to introduce themselves is the person you're going to talk to themselves. And so, Dorothy, why don't you take a chance to give us a little bit of your background and help the audience understand what your level of expertise is and why?
All right. Well, I'm Dorothy Bonvillain. I live in southern Arizona, the beautiful high desert of southern Arizona. We came out here to Arizona for my husband to teach at the Intel school here at Fort Huachuca. Um, we fell in love with it. We're native Texans. I grew up in a small town outside of Houston, Texas, and I really want folks to know that my mission now is to serve military wives and families and their children. The reason being is I grew up in this small town with these deep, deep roots, family roots that went way back in Texas and Louisiana, and they programmed me, I guess I would say, for lack of a better term, to be very provincial and to wonder why anyone would ever want to leave the borders of Texas. You know, Texas has it all. You know, it's more than a state, it's a state of mind. And I grew up with that. And by the time I was an adult, I was well sealed with that thinking. So when I met my husband, my junior year of high school, no, my sophomore year of high school, his junior year, he moved to LaPorte, Texas, where I'm from. And I met him and I thought, ooh, I like this guy. And I remember the name Bonvillain. So I'm Dorothy Bonvillain. Um, I remember hearing the name and I thought, what a beautiful name, but never dreamed that I would end up with such a name. But I'm Dorothy Guy Bonvillain. And when he asked me to marry him, I was very reluctant to do so because the military lifestyle, with all of its transitions and changes and challenges that are just sort of built in, I found very unsettling. So initially I resisted and he convinced me. So 54 years later, here I am. And he's now retired after 20 plus years with the military and then in government service after that, serving our government. So here we are, and I have this great passion to reach out to military wives and families, and I'm creating my own website. I actually have a doctorate degree now in education and in educational leadership. So I've served as a classroom teacher in my career. I began as a classroom teacher of teaching children. It's a great love of mine. I love teaching young ones. Um, but I ended up, because of our moving and different opportunities that were created for me, I have been a high school principal. I'm now a certified John Maxwell team coach in leadership, and I love teaching leadership and now legacy. So it's really leadership and legacy focused. My website is Dr. Dorothy Guy Bonvillain, and I'm creating a path for warrior wives. In the future, it will be warrior kids too. And I'll add warrior families where I talk about leadership and legacy and coach and teach in those areas. So that's my passion. That's my mission. My husband keeps saying, I want it to all go away. I just want to be retired. I missed a lot of time. He was gone, either TDY or, deployments. And we did miss a lot of time. During those times, to his chagrin, I had to become very independent, and we had two sons. We raised two sons as military brats, but they're not brats, they're great young men. We were just there in Denver area with them for our Thanksgiving, Christmas celebration early. And they're great guys. They can talk to anyone today. So when I first began to describe my experience as a military wife of, and I still say 54 years because he did continue on and it was very similar. He deployed to Bosnia. He was in Bosnia twice. He was in Afghanistan. He was in Iraq. And his first mission war zone was Vietnam. So
Yeah.
he was very marked by his Vietnam experience in particular at a very young and early age. And he's an Army Ranger. So, Army Rangers are steeped in the myth of, we can do anything and, we're probably never going to die. And well, he's learned that that's not true. Uh, he's a tough guy, but he now wants time and he tries to talk me out of this mission, but there's no talking me out of it. I have to do it. I tell him it's not really it's my calling, but I didn't call for it, it called me. And I know that I have valuable knowledge now with my training with the Maxwell team and leadership and my personal leadership experience taking an at-risk high school when we came out here to Arizona. It was about to be closed up for misusing, just all kind of abominations. They were about to close it. And I went in to just talk to the head of that organization. And in my conversation, she said, Dorothy, I'm either going to have to close this school or I need a leader. Will you step in and take over as principal? My initial reaction was no. I'd read about it in the newspaper and I knew that it was total chaos. But as I was driving home that day, if I'm lying, I'm dying, God tapped me on the shoulder. I need you to take this mission. And I knew I had to do it. So it took me, my measuring stick was, would I put our own two sons in here? It took me 5 years to answer yes to that question, a very, very difficult work. But we turned it around and now they excel. It's a great, I love to add value to people. I love to add value to organizations. I love to add value to families. So that's why I am doing what I'm doing. That's who I am. That's what I do.
See, I never could have remembered all that. It's so much better to get the person who's actually being introduced to do it themselves. Um, well, there's a lot to unpack there. So, as you know, on the way forward, we have higher ed individuals in that category of education. We also have the military and Department of Defense. And we also have enterprise businesses. And so just about everything you're doing touches all three of the areas that we're focused on,
Yeah,
especially the leadership one. But there's, first I just want to tell you, I'm a military brat and I've got three military brats, and I'm proud to say I'm a brat. And brats know what brats are. And that is a compliment and it's a club. And we're very tight when we meet. So we're all programmed to know what it's like. And then the spouses who've done what you've done are also a very unique breed of men and women.
yeah,
And most of the time they have the same experience as you. They don't have that, get up and pull away from Red Oak, Iowa or Texas and
yeah,
and get suddenly, drugged to 92 nations in 35 years, with multiple deployments and never knowing when mommy or daddy are coming back. So it makes
yeah,
for very unique and interesting people with military people. I try to explain this when I'm talking to a counterpart. It's not that we're better. It's just that we've had, in the same period of time, they've had 4 experiences. We've had 54 experiences.
yeah,
And that's just the nature of the business that we are in.
yeah,
Have that kind of experience thrown at us. And so we kind of have a few more ideas and tricks and ways to get around things that most normal educations and experience don't get a person. And again, that's just the nature of the beast. And so I would like to go backwards. And so where you're at today, you've moved into the entrepreneurial mode, which we help a lot of entrepreneurs. But you said something critical. You said you got your EDD. You went and got your doctorate in education or
I have a PhD in education.
PhD in education, excuse me. And so if you don't mind, because I'll admit I'm about to turn 64 and I'm in my second year of my EDD in leadership, interdisciplinary leadership. How old were you when you continued your lifelong learning journey?
I was in my 60s when I
Okay.
went.
All right.
And
So
let me tell you this, Chris, because I think this is a critical story. We had been in Saudi Arabia no, I've been in Oman. we were in Oman when we came back to Washington, DC for the second time. And
Yeah.
I decided, I had led a project in Oman for their Ministry of Education, and where we went all over that country and researched their traditional handcrafts, their beautiful gold
Mhm.
work, silver work, and carved wooden windows and shipbuilding and all these wonderful things. And I wrote a book on it, and it's published by their Ministry of Education. So that was an incredible opportunity, but you can imagine I had to go back alone. The military would not let him extend and stay over. So they
Yeah.
moved the family back to Washington. The boys were budding teenagers at the time. Fortunately, we had put them at an American school in Switzerland the year before, because there was no American schooling there at the time.
Wow.
And I wasn't real happy with the school that was available. So they were there one year, and then I thought, I want them to be competitive when they get back home. So I put them in an American school in Switzerland, which I think, I didn't realize at the time, but it prepared them for me staying in Oman.
Yeah.
And I was offered the opportunity, and it was once in a lifetime opportunity to lead this team. Of all Arabs, I was the only American. And as a female, it was challenging. And I met the challenge. And so I came back to Washington thinking, there's nothing I can't do. And I went to several schools there, University of Maryland having the largest school of ed. So it made sense, that they had more resources to, I sat down with the dean of the School of Ed, and he really thought that that's where I fit and belonged. But I went to American University, and I'll never forget, I was sitting with the dean of education there. And as he was talking to me, and I was describing, he was asking me about my experience in Oman. And I was describing these incredible opportunities of being in these villages all over that country and doing what we did. And he shook his head, and he said, "Oh, I shudder to think, and this is for you, working on your doctorate." Uh, he said, "I shudder to think what it's going to do to you, to your enthusiasm and your passion to put you through a doctoral program."
Yeah.
At the time, I was taken aback because it had been less than an hour that he'd spent with me. And he could tell that I had this belief that there's nothing I can't do at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the time I got through with that entire dissertation project, and I believe that my gift is writing, I can express myself well when I'm writing and in words. That writing project and the committee and looking at it and go back and do this, I mean, it really had taken that total sense of confidence and resilience that I had developed. It just sort of took the wind out of my sails. So I asked myself, why am I doing this to myself? Because it's taken me years now to rebuild it. I mean, he knew it was, I'll never forget that gentleman,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
his insight into where I was at the time and what it might do to someone like me was very clever, very insightful. Anyway, I did it. I finished it by, hook or crook. I don't give up. And so that was part of my learning, and that's part of my leadership experience that I draw from.
Well, and I think, and I haven't completed mine, so my opinion might change, but I started off, it was having a class and a class and a project, so getting back into the rhythm, uh,
Yeah.
at this point in your life where you've kind of enjoyed undoing having a rhythm. I'd had
Yes.
about 5 years of trying to break out of the same thing I did for 35 years in the Army. But I had there's always that seminal moment, or that crucible moment where you go, what am I doing? And I really had one. I had a really interesting impasse with an instructor. Um, and I thought, I should be better than this. I should rise above this. Only after being counseled by my wife who, said, do whatever you want, but if you're going to do it, quit complaining about it.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah. Well,
Just
my
do
most critical moment was walking in the library, and we'd been over in the Middle East, and the technology, everything was online. And
it.
when I finished my master's back years before,
Yeah.
I had card catalogs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Chris, I walked in there. I'll never forget walking in there, and I was just overwhelmed. I was completely,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
everything was online. And so I got in line at the information desk, and I remember standing there feeling completely overwhelmed and intimidated. And I got up there to the librarian and I said, I'm planning to do a doctoral program here, and I don't even know how to access information.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh dear, sweetheart," and she started talking to me. She was very kind, thank God. But I had to learn. I mean, I went home that day and I just cried.
Yeah.
As a military wife, I don't cry easily.
No.
I cried my heart out. I just thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of my instructors, he described, again, the generational thing. They've got kids in there
Yeah.
it just walked out of the masters straight into it. And then they've got others that have got a couple years,
Yes.
course of doing it. And he says, then we always have someone, and there's two of us. There's two of us in the cohort that have made it this far together. And we're both in our 60s. And he goes, and then there's you guys. he was like, so here's the three phone numbers you need to put on speed dial: the librarian, the research assistant, and the IT guy. And
Yeah.
that is so true because there's like just download these resources and you go to this and here's RevWorks. It's like, oh my God. So yeah.
It's a whole different language. And you've got to learn it. And it's not easy. It's not easy. But
No,
running an organization is not easy. Turning a high school around is not easy.
no.
Uh, it's leadership. And, John Maxwell says, that everything begins and ends with leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I like about the degree. I mean, you get a little pushback. Somebody go, well, why are you wasting your time learning about leadership? I go, well, in 2 years of being forced to go back and read and
Yeah.
dig into this and get even deeper than what I had done in the military schools and civilian schools I've been to up
Right.
to the point. But really, some of it resonates differently now. It's like a book you read when you're younger, and it had a certain meaning to you at the time. But if you read it again, it has a different meaning because you can
Yeah.
empathize and you can understand better. And so, yeah, that's what this has been. I get excited about it because it
Oh,
has
yeah.
really helped my ability to run my business. The
Yeah.
tools that you and I were terrified of are tools that I use now routinely. And quite frankly, they've made me a better writer. They've made me a better,
Yes.
person to explain things. And so, I don't, the question is, what are you going to do with the degree you're done? It's like, nothing. It's just the process is what's helping me improve at this point in my life to, again, it goes back to Denning-Kruger. I don't know if you're familiar with that model, but it's the confidence and knowledge on a X and Y axis. And Denning-Kruger were the guys that said, you have a lot of young people or you have a lot of uninformed people that are very high in confidence. They have one or two facts. Their confidence is high. They know something better than everybody else, and they're very loud about it until somebody pops their bubble and shows them, well, you really don't know that much. And so
Yeah.
drop in their confidence, but in that drop, they learn, they grow in knowledge. And so it's always coming to the realization that knowledge and wisdom is the acknowledgement that you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And
Right.
that's what, again, this is just reaffirmed when you get to the point like you did, where you're like, hey, I know all this. And then all of a sudden somebody goes, no, you don't. That's a person of wisdom has poked you. Yeah, good stuff. So you lifelong learner, leadership. Let's go back to that school. That's an interesting situation because I told you earlier I had a situation like that yesterday.
Yeah.
After you made the decision, once you committed yourself and you aligned your passion to it, how do you approach solving a problem like that? How does a new CEO or principal or president walk into what some people are saying, this is a mess and probably morale is low,
Oh,
everyone is worried, and here you come? How did you approach that? What are the best practices or good ideas you drew from that?
Okay, one of the things that really served me well, stepping into that sort of challenge, because here I was, a white female. They considered me, I had come there from the DC area, so I was a total outsider to, these Southern Arizonans down here. It's a completely different type culture.
Mm-hmm.
But I was aware, having lived, we lived in Saudi Arabia, we lived in Sultanate of Oman, we lived in Africa. So I was very attuned to culture and the importance of cultural differences and identities and the culture of an organization. Well, this one was it was a ground zero. It wasn't even a ground level. It was a ground zero. It was decimated.
Yeah.
And they'd had a student protest. They walked out of the school. I mean, I'd read about it in the newspaper, so I knew it was a terrible situation. In fact, when I told Frank I was going to take principal of that high school, he was like, "Did you bump your head somewhere?" Because he'd read the papers too. And he said, "This is a recipe for disaster."
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that, but like I told you, I felt led, called. It was a calling to take it. So I knew it was something I had to do. It wasn't by choice in the beginning. But I set my measuring stick. Would I put my own two sons here? I will not quit until I can say, yes, I would put my own two sons here.
Mm-hmm.
That was a high standard. And then I had learned I was, thank God, about that same time, I had joined, well, I hadn't joined the John Maxwell team yet, but I'd gone through the leadership program at American University. And leadership is what just stirred my passion. So I knew things about leadership, and I'd met Les Brown, the motivational speaker. I'd met Les Brown in Washington, D.C., and he had just come to Washington to make positive change in the capital city.
Mm-hmm.
That was his mission. And so I got to know him, and he would talk about, you have greatness in you. You have greatness in you. And when he said that, it landed on me. I mean, my heart just opened up. I never had anybody say you have greatness in you. You have unlimited potential. I mean, that just wasn't, my parents were wonderful and very supportive and great parents, but they didn't know to say things like that to me.
Yeah.
I was a great student, but I'd never had a teacher say, you have greatness in you. Your potential is unlimited. Just go for it. Those were things that had not been said. So I picked that up from Les. You have
Mm-hmm.
greatness in you. And I decided, okay, I'm going to learn students' names and I'm going to call them by name. And so I would stand at the door where the students would enter the school. And I began to practice, learning names, calling them by names. And I would say things like, do you look at these beautiful people? Do you feel your greatness today? And at first they were like, I mean, it was totally foreign concept to these kids
Yeah.
because I don't like the term at risk in education,
Yeah.
but at that point in time, that school was very much at risk. And so were most of my students. And I thought, I'm going to get to know their stories. I'm going to teach them that they do have greatness within them and that there's nothing they can't do if they set their heart and mind to it. And I have personal stories that I can share that, to back that up. I did the same thing with my staff. And,
Yeah.
and so I had learned in some of my leadership courses that core values are really important. They're important to an individual, they're important to a family, they're important to an organization, a community, a nation. Okay. And so I used my core value principles. What are our core values for this organization, for this mission, where number one, we've got to turn the school around and rebuild it. And then number two, to convey knowledge and share knowledge and be great teachers for our students, because the most important person in their life right now, other than their family, is that teacher in front of their classroom. So I use those sort of concepts and that sort of encouragement, the criticality of the mission that we were taking on. And I had to I remember the first person I had to get rid of several people on staff who I
Yeah.
could I realized they just were not going to come on board. And they were pushing back and who are you? And you came out of Washington and, it was, God, it was such a challenge. I'd drive home and I would think, well, today they didn't key my car. That was something these kids would talk about is, keying cars just to be mean. Um, taking guns into the Circle K, when people were buying gas and, I mean, things that were I was so taken aback by what I was exposed to, and yet I loved them. I called them by name. I spoke greatness into their life. I held them accountable and I told them these are the values. And I put our mission, our vision for our school up in several places. I told them, I said, I'm going to ask you what it is. So you have to be able to tell me. And they responded. They
Yeah,
had not had people in their lives who were told, I would tell my staff, we are their role model. They don't have it at home. They're living in dysfunction and we have to, that's the way we serve them.
yeah.
It's love them first, teach them second, and you've got to role model all the time. They're always watching us. That's what we did. And I would use my greatness and I used it with my staff and so I give a lot of credit to Les Brown. What I learned from his motivational,
What were
mission.
you,
Yeah.
so what did you go back for a second and appeal for? I mean, I know Les Brown and he was an incredible guy. What,
Yeah.
how did you get to work with him? I mean,
Well, well, that's an interesting story too. One of our really dear friends when we were living in DC was a big Zig Ziglar fan.
okay.
He was always quoting Zig Ziglar's quotes, anytime I kind of felt stuck or like something I couldn't do, he would give me a Zig Ziglar quote. And so, so a big success seminar came to Washington. Well, that was those, they still do them.
Yeah,
And with a whole roster of great speakers that day.
yeah.
And so I bought George a ticket because he was always doing things for us and he never wanted anything in return. And so I bought George a ticket to the success seminar. And there were thousands of people. It was in a big convention center. I don't remember where we were that day, but it was thousands of people there. And so different people spoke, Zig being one of them, and it was great. But um, uh, as Les Brown came up, he was right before lunch. And so I remember looking at George, and this was kind of one of those God moments. I remember looking at George and I said, let's sneak out early so we can get ahead of the crowd and have lunch because there was only like a 45-minute lunch break or something. And he looked at me and he said, have you ever heard Les Brown speak? And I
Yeah.
said, no. And he was just one of them because most of them were really big, well-known speakers. And I said, no. And he said, you want to hear him? So when I heard him, out of all of these famous speakers,
Yeah.
his message was the most impactful. And in his talk that day, he said, I've just come to Washington. I have this radio program and I'm going to make a positive difference in the Capitol. And so I thought, I need to meet this guy. And so Chris, I started calling the radio station. And
Oh, okay.
it's called, and I wouldn't give up. I would say, I just need to talk to Les Brown because I was about to start my doctoral program and I was going to start on this mission that, this passion was growing in me of, I need to give back to the military families. I need to share my experience. I've got so many incredible stories and opportunities. And so I wouldn't take no for an answer. I've learned, don't take no for an answer. If it's really important, you have to keep going. And so finally, I had not gotten through to him. And I was working on writing my dissertation one day. I was at home alone and the phone rang and I answered and he said, hello, this is Les Brown. I understand, what, and I couldn't think. My mind just shut up. I was so taken, by surprise that I couldn't. He said, what is your question? My question, it didn't come. And so when I was trying to formulate, what do I want to say? He said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go. And I thought, okay, he hung up and he was gone. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just totally blew it. I'll never get to speak to him. But in about an hour, he called back and he said, I'm so sorry I had to go on the air. Um, he said, what is your question? And by then I told him, I said, well, I heard you speak at the six, and I have some questions for you. I just want to meet you. I want to talk to you. The unlimited potential, the greatness, that's something I need to know more about.
Yeah.
And so he invited me to come sit down with him. And then he would invite me to go to some of the speaking events where he did, so I could learn sort of what he was doing and how he was doing it. And, it was like, and then he came down to my school.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
came down because he was going to be speaking in Tucson. And so he came down, I went and got him, brought him down here. He spoke to my students. The next year, Leslie, his son, came down because he was more their age, and
Mm.
he spoke to my students.
Yeah.
And so, they just made a difference in my life, and that's what he's about. And he certainly did it for me, and he did it for my students,
Wow.
and that's a great.
And there's so back to the school now. So
Okay.
no. So I no,
I'm sorry.
this is the beauty of it when we meet someone like you. There's all these connections, there's all of these people, influencers and things that you use, and then you turn that back and you aspire a young person. um,
Yes.
when I used to talk to say, why did you stay in the military so long? I said, there is no greater sense of accomplishment in your heart than when you help someone to realize they're better than they've ever been told they are,
Yes.
and do it in an honest way. Kids don't buy this, the world is your oyster, you can do anything you put your mind to. No, you go and say, no, you have an incredible opportunity being an American.
Yes.
Most opportunities that kids across the planet, 98% of the humans that exist on the earth have less opportunities than you do at this moment in time.
Amen. Yeah.
What matters is what you do with it. Now I know I could never have been a brain surgeon. So if I just put my mind to be a brain surgeon, that would have never happened. And that I know is stupid to say to me. But
Yeah.
if you say figure out what that passion is and go after it, and then help them on that journey, because
Yes.
that journey may teach them something, like you can't be a brain surgeon, but you might be a great politician.
Absolutely.
So you by doing that. But I know I just can feel, because I've been there, you were not the recipient of all of your hard work at that. You never had the immediate positive certain feedback from those kids. It grew a little bit over time. Were you blessed to have them come back years later?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I still hear from some of them. Yeah, sure.
That's what I try to teach younger leaders is all of your hard work, all the example, all the investment of trying to help another human. The
Yes.
immediacy of that feedback you'll rarely be privileged to get it.
Right.
You might see
Sure.
an aha moment here and there and be proud, but 10 years from now, you bump into them at Hy-Vee
Yes.
and they say, you changed my life. That's
Yes.
what you do it for.
That's what you do it for. Absolutely.
There's no amount of money that can replace that feeling.
No,
So
no,
I know you had that.
I
Do you
did.
have a good example of one that just absolutely hated you for everything that you tried to do to them, and then
Oh yeah.
turned out
Yeah.
to have a great life because of you?
The fact that they didn't destroy my car was sort of my, the lightning rod, that because every day when I drive home, I think, well, today they didn't keep my car, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. They never threatened me.
Yeah,
I had one student that would not conform. And I'll never forget, he'd been a classroom teacher, a principal. He was been superintendent for years. He no longer wanted all that responsibility, but I hired him as one of my case managers with
yeah,
these. And he kept telling me, Billy has to go. Billy has to go. One bad apple can spoil the whole barrel. And I kept saying, no, I can reach him too. Just give me I need a little bit longer. Yeah. And I finally realized that just one was he was a leader.
Yeah.
And I tried to bring that out. I tried to help him see that he had influence, negative influence, but he had influence. And therefore he was a potential leader, but he could needed to lead in the right direction and he wouldn't go there. And so I finally had to get him off campus and I brought the police in. The first 2 weeks that I was there, this is another tactic I used. I brought the police dogs in with their dogs
Yeah.
because of drugs.
Yeah.
These kids, I would bust them for drugs, and they would say, "Well, we do it with our parents at home." What
Yeah.
they didn't get it, and so
Mm.
I had to make them get it. I said, "But you're not going to do it here." And so the first 2 weeks, no drugs at school, and they could brought the. I mean, it was chaotic. And they still didn't come after me. They somehow sensed from day one when I stood at that door where they came in and began to call them by name
Yeah.
and talk about their greatness and say they were beautiful because all people have their own beauty.
Yeah.
And so I just began to pour that into them. And Billy had to go. And once Billy left, that was probably a month. I really tried. Came home and cried that day too. And again, I don't cry easily, but I cried for him,
Yeah.
you know. But the rest of them did. They heard the message. And I would tell them, I said, people don't rise to low expectations.
Yeah.
These are the standards. These are my expectations. This is what we're going to do. And we ended up getting a national award for a hands-on project-based learning project. We did it at an old historical ranch site here outside of Sierra Vista.
Wow.
And I mean, I had to put together a whole integrated curriculum for that, and it had to meet the state standards. I mean, you talk about work, but we
Yeah.
did it because I had kids, and this is when you say, you've made a difference for a young person. I had kids in that program, and I could fill up both hands and still have some left over, who told me, had it not been for the Brown Canyon Ranch project, we'd have dropped out of high school.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, so I
Huge.
just knew that they learned differently. They needed a different way of applying the principles and the concepts that we were teaching in a different way. And so
Yeah.
I fought for that. We did it. We saved an old ranch site that the Forest Service now owns, and we're thinking about tearing down. I mean, lots of history, and we saved all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I look at my life, that's what my husband and my kids said. I'm gonna go back to something I didn't say earlier. When I first started talking about, this is what I'm gonna do, and this was my experience. At first, I didn't have words for my experience. I couldn't find the words to capture what I felt. And they would say, well, I remember Frank in particular, he was like, well, what are you saying? Are you saying after, for 40 years you were miserable and you never said anything? And I would say, no, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. It
Yeah.
took me about 7 years of research and introspection and learning and growing to be able to say that at the end of the day, and these are my three pillars that I teach and coach on for military wives and families. I felt, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because like you said, it's sort of the nature of the beast.
Right.
Okay, and it's what you do with it. But I didn't have a framework of understanding. I didn't have any mentors. Mentoring is so important. I didn't have any mentors step forward and say, what are your challenges and how can I help? I didn't have any of that. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. But I realized, and I've got words for it now, is I often felt disconnected. Just about the time that I could feel connected to a community and I could add value and that there was something there I could do and I could contribute. Um, we were, we had to move,
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
it was PCS time. And so and then we'd get somewhere and a lot of military wives really struggle to find a job.
Mhm.
That's in the military is working on that now, and I salute them for that. But it is a challenge. I was always pretty lucky with that, finding something that I enjoyed and I grew from and I learned from. But disconnection was a terrible feeling that I went through over and over and over. And being a people person, it was painful.
Yeah.
You know, and then uncertainty, the uncertainty of it, it's just, you don't know. And my brother will argue with me and say, well, because he was a manager for Reliant Energy, he would say, well, executives and CEOs, go through some of the same things. They often have to move. And I said, yeah, and they do. And so do firemen and policemen's families. And, there are, but I can only speak from my experience. And there's still a difference because you so often don't know. You don't know. There were times when Frank, particularly once he was at Fort Huachuca and doing that sort of work, I didn't even know where he was, and I couldn't know. So there's an uncertainty where are you going next, and when are we going to have to go? And at the end of his career, I felt insignificant. And here I'd done things like lead this incredible project in Oman. And so their argument to include our sons was, gosh, Mom, look at all you've done. Look at what you've already accomplished. What is it? And I said, I felt at the time as active duty, I felt like I was sort of a tag along, that I was not part of the equation. I didn't have autonomy
Yeah.
in my own life. And I had more than I realized I did, but had no one to speak into my life and talk about these things. And so at the end of the time, I really felt insignificant, even though I'd done some great things. So I kept saying I wasn't unhappy, and I wasn't the type to sit around crying my beer. But as I have, I've really assessed it. And I said, you guys, we get you a new place. The boys were in school. Kids are flexible. Yes, they had to make new friends. Now they can speak to anyone. Very
Yeah.
comfortable. So yeah, would I do it again? I kept saying I would do it again, but I've got to be able to describe what I know hundreds and thousands of military spouses and families are dealing with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you guys are so mission focused, you're so well programmed. You always had your job when you got to your new station. You just stepped right into that. You went forward. You were mission focused. You have to be. I don't have an issue with that. My issue is what happened, how I ended up. And I want to help families realize, look, here are the realities. Here are tools and strategies that you can use moving forward and not end up feeling disconnected, uncertain,
Yeah.
insignificant.
Yeah. Well, no, it's it's like talking to my wife Marguerite. She had the same experience, and the interesting thing is, two of our brats, our sons, decided to go into the army, despite the fact I said please don't, because
Yeah.
I just didn't want to have to go through it yet again. Because
Yeah.
so I did it as a kid, I did it as an adult, and now I'm doing it as a parent
Wow.
because when my youngest was heading to Afghanistan, my wife looked at me and said, "You go take my baby's place."
Wow. Yeah.
And the inference was, I can't get another son, I can get another husband. So I lived, but I haven't been the spouse, and so watching Marguerite do the same sort of
Yeah.
morphosis. But the beauty of it is we were fortunate, our sons went in. So now we had two daughter-in-laws who were military spouses. And so they did have a mentor.
Yeah.
And it was my wife. And I think that was, I mean, the beauty of it, if you look at our website, my daughter-in-law is on our website. She is an entrepreneur. She's a military spouse. She's a former military spouse. She had a child in the military. Now she's having one out of the military, and
Wow.
she broke away. And now she does exactly what you're talking about. She does career counseling for mothers,
Yeah.
who are building work-life balance with children, and for former military spouses. And she found her passion, like you, built her
Yeah.
business. But the big thing for her was taking that leap from, again, into the unknown. And she'll
Yes.
tell you that, that the military lifestyle helped her get that way because she was a homebody, like I say, homebody. She was normal,
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
everybody else.
Normal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
normal, unlike the rest of us. And our other daughter-in-law did the same thing and got her advanced degrees in counseling, and she now has her own business.
Yeah.
Both of those spouses with children, with
Yeah.
that experience, through a little mentorship, what you get, they could now, look at your website, which we'll make sure is on this podcast, and say,
Yeah.
how do you make that leap into the great unknown? Into
Yeah.
that. How do you do that leap of faith? And that's what I watched with both of my daughter-in-laws. Is it's like that scene in Indiana Jones. They grabbed their heart, they took the step, and they hoped there was something there.
Yeah.
Because the thing is if there wasn't, we would encourage them to get up and do it again. And they both
Yes.
took that leap, and it works. It works, and that's what I love doing, the coaching for entrepreneurs to say, even like, and both of their husbands, my sons, are they're also independent 1099 entrepreneurs, and they have W-2 jobs. Okay.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other one's got a
Yeah.
W-2 job. He's a 1099, and he's in the Missouri National Guard. So again,
Wow.
military kids, there isn't one size fits all. There is no normal.
That's right. That's
Everything
right.
is diverse. It's either
Yeah.
neurodiverse or whatever. But
Well,
no,
that's been a struggle too, just learning to be an entrepreneur.
yeah,
Because I say I'm an entrepreneur with an educator's heart.
yeah,
And educators just we generally we give, we give, we give.
yep.
You know, and so being an entrepreneur has been a huge leap of faith. I'm still not there. I'm still learning, but that's okay.
No, and if you said you were there, I would throw something through the screen at you because I know it's a journey. But I think I want to pull on the thread of Ed Brown again, or Les Brown again, because that's something I think our entrepreneurs and others have got to understand. This is how you and I met. You just
Yes,
called me out of
yes,
the blue
I
and
did.
said, "Hey, I want to talk to you."
I did. I did because when I saw that CNN coverage of you telling those soldiers, having the courage, number one, and within you, but for them, your leadership skills were very obvious to me, and I was into leadership study at that time. But for them to do it,
Mhm.
in that sort of a crisis situation, it had to be so unnerving and totally frightening. And for you to tell them and then them to follow suit, you know, take a knee, point your rifles to the ground and smile. I thought, I have to talk to this man. I have to talk to this man. I've learned not to be afraid. People who have done incredible things, they love for you to come and want to learn and know.
Yeah,
Uh, and I feel the same way. I want to give back. I want to make people better. I want to build and just add value and
yeah.
let people know we really do have unlimited potential. Yes, I couldn't be a brain surgeon either. I'm not sure yet I can be an entrepreneur, but
Well,
I'm building a website. I have a vision for what it's gonna, I know who I'm gonna serve, but
yeah.
I can serve. A lot of people say my book,
Here you
my
go.
book, my book is Loving Your Life, 7 Steps for Military Wives. And people who have read it say, well, that's really for anyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Why
I
do
was gonna
you
say
think
I would not come to your website because I'm not a military spouse. I'd go there anyway. But
yeah,
but
yeah,
the courage it takes to do what you do, which is just pick up the phone and call them and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you." There's two lessons in it that I'd like our audience to take from that. One is that it is okay because
yeah.
and I can only speak for myself, but well, let me take this back. Henry Kissinger, when somebody said, "Just call him," for about 2 years, I kept saying that is not, that man wouldn't return my call to say, there's no reason for him to, and you know what? He took the call. And I had
Wow.
lunch. I had lunch with him. I had lunch with Henry Kissinger on K Street in Washington, D.C. He didn't have anything else to do. And he talked for 4 hours. He
Wow.
just sat there. I mean, it was like history. It was a celebrity. it was mind-bending things I'd never thought about. Just
Yes.
asked him questions and he just kept talking. But what I learned is that people like that, people assume you should leave them alone. So they literally are sitting on gold mines of knowledge and wisdom, experience, and nobody's
Yes.
asking them for it. And most of the time, those kind of people are so humble that they don't
Yes.
put anything out there. They're not out there to ingratiate. They did it,
Yes.
they have it, they'd love to share it.
Yeah,
But
they long to share it. They
yeah,
long to share it.
mentors are not assigned. They don't come find you. Mentors have to be asked.
Yes.
That's the greatest relationship. Pick up the phone and go, I would love to spend some time with you. I'd love to learn more from you. And I'm
It's,
saying this because I'm trying to get at Richard Branson right now because he just opened a school for dyslexic people. I'm dyslexic, and my dissertation is the lived experiences of leaders with dyslexia. And,
wow.
and what I have found and what I'm confirming in my research so far is that some incredible leaders are dyslexic. And there's the power and the gift of dyslexia. It's not a mental illness, it's not a deficiency, it's just a different wiring of the brain. So we see the world from very different lens, and we tend to be really empathetic and strong leaders. And
Oh, yes.
when you sit
Yeah.
there, you go Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Einstein, you know, Henry Winkler, my favorite actor in the whole world. You go through this list of people who were dyslexic, and you go, wait a minute, I thought this was, So I just recently took a dyslexic kid to Fort Leavenworth with a group of high school students, did something similar to what you were talking about. I thought, I'm going to take them down. I'm going to show them the largest university in the world, all these majors doing wargaming, all these majors, at their mid-career, top of their class and everything. And the kids that I met in the special ed class that I was working with and with the
Yeah.
mainstream class of working with, so it was a mix. They were okay when I saw them in the classroom. When they were there, they were magnificent. They were engaged. They asked questions. They joked. At one point, I put them in an auditorium just to show them. I'm showing them the largest auditorium west of the Missouri River. That was my intent. They ran up and jumped on the stage because there were two podiums and started a presidential debate.
Oh, wow.
I went to each microphone, and two got in the middle and played the moderator. And they were asking legitimate questions. And I just sat back and went, how did that, what? Oh my gosh. And so all day long, I've got teachers sending me notes going, are they behaving? Are they okay? Are they embarrassing you? And I'm like, these kids are incredible.
You just lit up their brain. Yeah.
Yeah,
Heart connected.
you just got to get them out of that. I mean, and I go back there, it's because it's the high school I went to, and I get almost ill. It's cinder block walls.
I
No,
have to tell you this. I have to tell you this story since you're
oh,
doing dissertation. I just, we were up there in the Denver area with our kids for our Thanksgiving, Christmas celebration. And my precious daughter-in-law is dyslexic. And when she and David decided they were going to marry, she felt totally intimidated by the fact that we all had degrees. The boys
yeah.
both had degrees. I think I was still working on my doctorate, but Frank has two masters, and I was working on a doctorate, and she said she just felt like, I shouldn't be in this family. And so she had not finished high school. She dropped out because she perceived, because of the way a lot of people didn't understand dyslexia back, back then. And she thought she was just really stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Her concept of herself was, I'm just stupid and I'm not enough and I don't measure up. And she struggled to read, and she kept talking about, I don't even have my high school diploma. And I said, Bethany, we're going to love you, diploma or no diploma, but if that is something you still desire, and I would recommend you get it just to show yourself you can, I'll go to class with you until you
Yeah.
feel. And so the first night we were going to go, and I was going with her, before we left the house to go to the school, because she said, it's just like you, I feel sick, I feel sick if I walk into any kind of school building. And I said, I'll go with you. So before we left, she had to go in the bathroom and throw up.
Mm-hmm.
She was that, tense about going into a school. But I
Yeah.
went with we began the process. She finished her diploma. And so we were just up there with them. And she and I were sitting out on the front porch having a cup of coffee. And she was talking about the difference I made in her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
and what I mean to her, and we just sat there and just cried together, David opened the door, was gonna come out and have coffee with us, and she said, and he just turned around and went back in. Two women sitting there crying, but it's life changing.
yeah, I mean, the stigma that you live with.
Yeah,
And we could do a whole show on this, but just
yeah,
just to tell you just quickly about me, um, I had a teacher who I loved her. In fact, you reminded me of her. She was just like you. She was my English literature teacher.
yeah,
And parent teacher conference, she with tears in her eyes, she didn't at the time didn't know anything about it. She just said, look, he's a wonderful kid. He's very disciplined. He listens. He's got a great sense of humor. I love having him in class, but I'm afraid he's retarded and he has to go to
yeah, that's how they,
because he can't. And that was the word at the time. And,
yes,
and with a teacher who you love, says that about you, it's just you internalize it. And that's what I saw with this kid, and I'm working with him one-on-one. But nobody ever said, hey, come here, until I was in the Army. And I was every time I went to an Army school, they always would test you, and then they would always try to get you up to speed. But unfortunately for young men, which is all young men in the infantry, Frank will tell you, said they would put you in English for dummies, reading
yes,
dummies,
yes,
math
yes.
for they would just come right out and call you dummies in front of, all you dummies got to go to extra class tonight. And they'd read your name out in front of everybody.
Yeah, I'm on that list.
Oh,
Yeah.
and that's just demoralizing. But one of those instructors said, come here, draw me a picture. Draw me a picture of a calendar. And I drew an oval. And he went, oh my God. He goes, have you ever been tested for dyslexia? And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And next thing you know, he showed me 3 techniques. My world changed.
Wow.
My world changed. I became the provost of the largest university in the world, but I was retarded in high school. So yeah, I still get stomach aches when I walk past that classroom, because I have to walk past it to get to the special ed classroom. And then when I'm in there, that's the same one I was in 45 years ago.
Wow, Chris.
So yeah, that's what's been my passion with this degree is blowing this open and exposing it. And you watch somebody like Richard Branson, that's what
Yes.
he's doing by opening his own university.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I asked Bethany, I said, do you realize that Richard Branson is dyslexic?
Oh yeah, yeah. You gotta get her.
All kind of great people who have done great things.
He's got degrees online. It's a university. You might want to get her to look at.
Oh, I love that.
But that'd
Yeah.
be cool. That'd be cool. I'd love to talk to her sometime too.
Oh, yeah.
All right. You've already given us 3 things a couple of times. Well, let's give them again. We'll call these the
Pillars. I call them pillars.
Dorothyisms.
Okay.
All right. So give us our Dorothyisms, and we can conclude with this today and thank the audience for taking the time to watch us.
The 3 things that I feel like I came out at the end of the thing. Is that it?
Yeah, sure. Or the 3 things you did at the high school.
Oh gosh. Well, the 3 things I did at the high school, and that was after I'd stepped into that leadership role and that leadership mindset and that unlimited potential, believing in unlimited potential for anyone who finds their passion, who finds their purpose, and who knows their mission. Okay, those are really the 3 things, but that's where I was with this school. I knew I'd been called to do it. And I did it with being personal, calling names, learning about who they were. It wasn't what are you doing? It's who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? And then convincing them that they had unlimited greatness, just unlimited potential and greatness inside. And then giving a values-based awareness of our core values and how important that is for an individual, for an organization, our school, for our community, for our city, our country, and really for the world. My prayer is that the world will come back to that sort of centeredness of core values and human dignity and kindness. One of my favorite quotes, I'll leave you with my favorite quote. is be kind whenever possible. And it's always possible to be kind.
That's incredible, Dorothy. Thank you for your time today. Have a
My
great
pleasure.
holiday.
It's my pleasure.